Hi, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Tulsa World Opinion video podcast. I'm Ginnie Graham, editorials editor at the Tulsa World.
I'm Doucette, editorial writer and stuff.
And the national news has always been talking recently about Twitter, right?
Yep.
So my prediction, Bob, is that in a year, there will be no Twitter. Or it'll be Twitter, weird Twitter. And I think it'll be gone and something else will replace it. My kids will have to tell me. But what you are talking about, you're putting out the warning flags on TikTok. You're an anti-TikToker. You're an old man. You don't get the TikTok. Well, what's really going on with TikTok? You wrote about that this weekend.
Well, first things first, I'm not sure Twitter lasts a week at this point. But
only the hardcore workers, whatever that means. I'm sorry, if my boss came in and said, "Are you going to work hardcore?" Yeah, I'm gone. I'm 50.
Yeah, that's
my hardcore.
They might have 100 people left there before it's all over, and I don't know how they keep it going. So, but yeah, so I kind of went the counter thing. Everyone's talking about Twitter, and I went ahead and decided to do something on TikTok. So the app is fun. You know, everybody is basically imitating TikTok now with all the reels on Instagram and Facebook, and Twitter tried to do something of like featured videos to imitate what they've done at TikTok. And they use a vertical video format, dance competition or lip sync dance videos, challenges and stuff like that. A lot of fun and everything like that. But there are some things about TikTok that I don't think most people know. For starters, unlike all these other big social media platforms, it is not American. It's not an American-based thing. It's Chinese-based. So a company called ByteDance created TikTok. It had its own version there in China. They merged that with an American company that they bought, and then boom, TikTok is born. So like every other social media platform, they are relentless harvesters of data, of user data. And that has its own concerns. We've talked about that quite a bit with the other social networks and with Google and plenty of other big tech companies. But the real question is, who has access to that data? So like say with Facebook, they have their reams and reams of data that they use for targeted ads and stuff like that. You know, essentially, we are the product is the theme that went down last year when all this started blowing up at Facebook. But the real question is, given the close ties that industry has with government in China, is China getting access to American users' data or anybody else's data if they so choose? So the people at TikTok are saying that they've kind of firewalled that a little bit, that it doesn't happen or it'd be very unlikely. I don't really know. And some of the evidence pointing toward Chinese government influence on this company can be seen in its moderation policies. So one example that I cited was a teenager American, the daughter of Afghan immigrants, and she was being socially conscious, you know, in between all these really cool fashion videos that she was, you know, posting on TikTok. She was also talking about the plight of the Uyghurs in China. And if you don't know anything about them, they're a small people group, maybe 20 million Chinese living in the western part of the country, predominantly Muslim, and they have been targeted by the Chinese government for basically what people are describing as ethnocide, trying to re-educate these folks, put them in camps. There may be 1 million Uyghurs right now in these re-education camps in China, and it's a major deal. So she started putting videos about that, and then they started disappearing, and then her account was suspended. So she made a pretty big fuss of that on other social media platforms, and that got the people at TikTok to kind of back off from that. But it's not the only thing that they've done. Anything that could be perceived as critical of the Chinese government or the Chinese Communist Party, we've seen TikTok have some very heavy-handed moderation on those things in the past. So how heavy is that right now? Hard to say. We'd have to kind of do a bigger, deeper, more recent dive on that thing to see. But this has become a big enough national security concern in U.S. government circles that they're warning members of Congress, members of the military, TSA, other agencies like that, don't install this device on government, or install this app on government devices, because we don't need these folks raking in a bunch of data about what you do. And I could see how that would be a major concern, at a place like the Pentagon or the National Security Agency or something like that. If you got data from high-ranking people with access to very sensitive information, suddenly just handing over data that could be harvested by a rival foreign government.
The one thing that was interesting about it, and you kind of touched on it, one of the areas where the Trump administration and the Biden administration agree on, both have come to the conclusion that TikTok is a possible Trojan horse. Yes. And that is going to be a very difficult sell, I think, particularly to young people, because my teenagers, if they were to hear us Gen Xers say, hey, there's a problem, they sort of blow it off as, you old geezers don't know. That's the way it works, without really understanding the ramifications of it and how that works. So, it's going to be that got my attention, that two administrations that are completely different in their outlook and view on world politics, on policy, agree on this particular thing. So I think that might have traction there. So, that is going to be interesting, and to see what replaces it, because while I think Twitter will be gone, there'll be something else replace it. And it'll be interesting to see if, TikTok can find, if there's a competitor that can find the same kind of popularity, which is what it is. And it very well may.
And that's been happening on Instagram, with Facebook/Meta. And I know different companies do this to each other, but Meta has been extremely aggressive over the years in seeing something that somebody else is doing and then just copying it.
Trying to do it, right.
So you saw that with Instagram stories and then later Facebook stories. Well, that's a ripoff of Snapchat. And now we've got Reels on Facebook and Instagram. That's a ripoff of TikTok. The hashtags and all that kind of stuff that was driving Twitter traffic. You saw Meta use that in Facebook and in Instagram, So it's not like people aren't trying to do that. But I would say, to your point, with younger users, and younger users are what drive growth in social media platforms, they're generally not going to get on Facebook unless they find I got to do this for this utilitarian reason. And they're not really as much on Twitter. They were very much on Snapchat, and now they're just diving into TikTok, just because, like I said, those videos are addictive. You can sit there and scroll through them for hours.
Yeah. I honestly just want to put everything away for a week and just hide from all of my technology for a while. So that's where I'm headed. Looking back at this past week, I wanted to mention the Cherokee Nation. They've had a lot going on. Some really cool things, some worthy projects. The one is the opening of a $20 million facility dedicated to the Cherokee language. This is a place where they do not have English there. Everything is in Cherokee. And they said, even with like exit signs, because they didn't want to use English, but they wanted to make sure that non-Cherokee speakers would understand where to go, they would just put a pictogram. So there are no English words. And what's cool is that over these decades, the nation has, through all different administrations, dedicated itself to not only the preservation of the language, but to bring the language back into daily use. Because there are elders who remember hearing the Cherokee language at the local community center or stores. That's where it's going. So they have daycare programs, childcare programs, starting with infants, that include language immersion of Cherokee, all the way up to, adult programs with Cherokee language. And that's a really cool thing, to be able to not just preserve a language, but to revive it into this kind of use. And they're putting all this under one center. So that was one really cool thing. The other that our editorial board made note of is this push to enact part of a treaty that allowed for the nation to have a non-voting delegate in Congress. And that's never been enacted. And Chief Hoskin made it a priority in 2019. And Kimberly Teehee was nominated by him, approved by the Cherokee Council. And they had a hearing in Congress to look into this. And when I was looking at it, it looked pretty positive that this might actually happen. And I think it's fantastic that this is a chance, because Congress has, obviously notoriously broken every treaty, every indigenous nation, it seems, through the centuries. Here's a chance to do something right. And then the treaty is it's like from 18, it was the treaty that led to the Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
And in that, I can't even call it an agreement. It was negotiated and it led to this genocide, but it was very clear in there that if the nation moved from, I think it's Tennessee, wasn't it? Where
North Carolina, Tennessee
area to Oklahoma, to this territory, the nation would have a delegate. And it's never happened. It can happen now. It's online, it's easily found. And I don't know, did you read anything with that congressional hearing? It seems like the people at least involved in that committee were encouraging, but I don't know what the greater U.S. House will view it.
Yeah, that's always kind of tricky. I can't see like a good reason not to, because it's not like you're changing the vote count.
Right. I mean, this is a non-voting member. Now, the person, if you're looking at sort of those non-voting delegates in the territories, they can vote in committees.
Right. Yeah. So they have influence
in legislation.
Yeah.
And they can speak on the floor of Congress, which would be very helpful when the House is considering legislation that could affect indigenous nations, to have a delegate that can get on the floor and speak to that. Those kind of things are important.
I think so. And I think the general takeaway that I get from both of these topics that you've brought up here is, for centuries, you've had this forced assimilation of indigenous peoples, as well as this forced, I don't know what you want to call it, diminishing of their own culture for a long, long time now. And it seems like you're starting to see some momentum here where the tribes are beginning to claw some of that back. It says, yes, we are going to keep some of our heritage. We're going to keep the language alive. We're going to teach this to younger people so it doesn't disappear, which would be a tragedy. And then, of course, like you're saying, maybe a little bit more influence on the political side. No, you don't get a vote on floor votes, but to have influence in the committees, to have your voice there, to work with people on things, and like you said, to have a voice, an indigenous voice in Congress that's not divided between, like say here in Oklahoma, we've got people who are tribal members, but their aims and their goals may not be specifically tied toward tribal issues. It might be, oh yeah, maybe I should think about that, while I've got this laundry list of other constituent and partisan goals in mind. A Cherokee delegate may not have to wrestle with that, and it might open the door for other tribes to get delegates in Congress too.
Well, and that is an interesting point, that it would be unique, a delegate from the Cherokee Nation, in the way that other delegates represent a geographic area. So even with the territories and non-voting delegates, they're representing all constituents who live in an area, where the nation's delegate would be representing a people, and the Cherokee people live across the country. So, but the primary interest would be in indigenous peoples, in the Cherokee people. So that was a very encouraging thing that sort of came out of that. And another big encouraging thing was the G.T. Bynum, the Tulsa mayor, gave his state of the city And he said, we are strong, which is, always a good message from there. But the mayor's big announcement was a goal of $500 million investment into housing and over the next 2 years, and specifically to diversify the housing options geared for lower to middle income people, because right now we have a huge homeless increase. It's national, certainly, but in Tulsa, it's pretty pronounced. And we apparently have shelter space that's plentiful. What we don't have are these other types of permanent housing, affordable housing, from the type of housing where you need support for people who might have mental health or physical challenges. There's also just, low income. We don't have enough people willing to take a Section 8 voucher. So you could have a low income voucher and no housing stock that'll take it. So there's a push now and it's a city priority to put $500 million into this effort. And it's good. We need that as a priority, because the biggest problem to homelessness is not having homes. So you've run into it trying to find an apartment. It's the prices have gone up, inflation's gone up, and right now people just are getting priced out. And I think Tulsa is sort of at a precipice, for lack of a better word, that we don't want to be so gentrified as a city that people can't, we don't want to have these huge gaps. The haves and have-nots get worse. And so we have to have enough housing for all the people we have. So I was really enthusiastic about that after his talk on that. So, and that includes even like eviction prevention, that people who are facing evictions, what options can those families have? Because oftentimes it's a job loss, it's medical debt, it's something, what can really be done? So you're at the same state of the city I was. That was my big takeaway. I think it was yours. Were there other things in that speech?
Well, $500 million is nothing to sneeze at, for sure. And I do like how he mentioned that no barrier or low barrier housing, temporary housing for homeless, we have a lack of that.
Right.
And we have some other types of shelter type of stuff that we have, but we're lacking that. Transitional housing for people who are coming out of homeless, a lack of that. Affordable housing, which is in his definition subsidized, like Section 8, a lack of that. And then market rate housing, we got a lack of that. So I like the idea that we're looking at this from a very comprehensive standpoint. We've got increasing prices, increasing demand, low stock across the board. And I saw a headline today, and I can't remember exactly which news outlet it was, but it was talking about the fact that, a majority of Americans now are working more than one job. So while I'm going to get real snarky here for a second, if you don't mind, while Elon Musk can blow $44 billion on Twitter and then tank it and still have tens of billions of dollars left over, middle-class Americans are having a hard time finding a place to live and working one job to stay in that place to live. This is a problem. So I'm hoping that we get some real solutions on this here in town and start looking at this from a more comprehensive standpoint, because it's a problem. I mean, if you're going to pinch 80% of the country or whatever it might be, to the point where they can't afford to live in the places they're living, we got a problem here. So I like that.
I want to make one point on this. Is Tulsa historically, when it comes to social net type things, we've leaned on philanthropists.
Yeah.
That the shelters have been, created and built and supported by philanthropists. So often this city looks to charity for these types of things. And at a certain point, when you have a societal problem in your city, it is on the backs of all of us to help solve that. So people and when you look at other cities who have made improvements and made great strides, they invest public dollars. They take 1/4 of a cent sales tax. They dedicate other types of taxes to housing, to homelessness. And Tulsa has not done that. And so I think what this is saying is that Tulsa as a city, if we want to be real about this, we're all going to have to put something in, that we can no longer depend on the charity of our great wealthy partners here to carry that burden. Everyone in the public has a responsibility to this. So for me, when I look at 500 million, you know, we are going to have to think of what do we as a public put into this, that we can no longer just go on as if it'll just be taken care of. So I'm glad that the mayor is putting a focus on this, and he's saying, as a public, we have to have a public investment in this.
You know,
public-private investment, fine, but we have to, as a public, invest here.
Yeah, if we didn't have, you know, large millionaire types, billionaire types donating all these things that we consider public good, think about what we wouldn't have. We wouldn't have river parks, because a lot of that's funded privately. There would be all kinds of things to deal with poverty and early education and things like that that we would not have. I mean, it's be there to some extent, but not to what it is without all of this stuff. And you were talking about other cities that have dedicated actual money. You know, look at Houston, look at Denver. They are using tax money to help solve a community-wide problem. And I'll tell you something, I mean, we can ignore this at our own peril, and out of sight, out of mind, till it's on your doorstep. And then you start getting to find out how real this is and how costly it is. The human cost of this is a human crisis. It's not something that's abstract. It's not, oh, we're too far in debt, or we need to be more competitive salary-wise. No, this is people's lives we're talking about, and the health of our neighborhoods and the health of the city. So yeah, I'm encouraged to see what comes of that. Follow through, kind of important. So we'll be watching that.
Right. Well, and so in ending this, or moving into the next thing we're going to talk about, is Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving. It's the best holiday. We've talked about this, hands down. I love it. You
best
eat,
food.
get to hang out, get to watch football. Great. So we have 3 really good op-eds coming up this weekend. One from Rabbi Mark Vitzerman, who has a really inspiring, I'm saying really a lot, but an inspiring tale of Ellis Island. There's an Ellis Island story he tells that's really sweet. And then another is from our community advisory board member, Sarah Miller, who she talks a little bit about how to reconnect with the idea of gratitude, how to get into that mind space of, because we have our daily crazy lives, and especially after the election, everyone's keyed up. So she speaks from her, you know, from herself, how she reconnects to realizing what our blessings are. And then the other one is from Kevin Harper, who is the CEO or executive director of Food on the Move. And he talks about Tulsa, what he calls Tulsa Strong, which we use that term. But he talks about the generosity he sees this time of year. He works in, you know, hunger issues and how we take care of each other and that type of thing. So, you know, it's Thanksgiving. It should be a time of a fellowship and that type of thing. For me, when I was thinking of Sarah Miller's, you know, sort of practices on getting back in touch with those kind of things, I start watching streaming services. I want to go back to finding my favorite Thanksgiving episodes, my favorite Thanksgiving movies, which there's only one worth saying anything about. So I think I'm going to ask you what your top Thanksgiving favorites are, and I'll tell you mine, because right now, and I will challenge anyone, WKRP in Cincinnati turkey drop. Number one, most fun, hilarious thing that'll get you in a good mood.
Yeah,
you want to argue with me?
goodness
Is there
for
anything
YouTube.
better than that one?
No, there's not.
No.
It's probably one of the best comedy of anything ever done on television. So yes. So yeah, we kind of, spoiler alert,
As God is my witness. Can we just say it? As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
So small spoiler alert, we actually talk about some of the stuff that we want to do on this podcast beforehand. You know, it's not all off the cuff. So I started thinking about it. Movies, planes, trains, and automobiles.
That's my second. That's the second thing I watch.
Charlie Brown Christmas or Charlie Brown
No.
Thanksgiving.
All right, here's my problem with Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. Peppermint Patty is a little much. She's kind of ungrateful. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you have toast and jelly beans and what was the other one? Popcorn, and she's complaining. What kid complains about that at Thanksgiving? Peppermint Patty, no, I'm done with her. And Lucy, I have a problem with them.
Peppermint Patty's got standards.
Peppermint Patty first of all, they're all neglected children, clearly, because they have no adults. And those toasters are a hazard. There should have been a fire. But my favorite thing is at the end. So, you know, when they're in the sedan and they're driving away and they're singing, I want a station wagon like that, where they're all like sitting around like they're in a living room pit. Have you ever noticed that? Like the design of the back of Charlie Brown's car. I want that. I want those cars back.
Another Thanksgiving movie, Son of a Woman, Al Pacino.
Really?
Oh yeah, there's a Thanksgiving scene in that one that's pretty epic, and it's just a really good movie. So, and then what I think of holiday season, holiday season movies, they all kind of lump together for me, and they're not necessarily holiday related. So, what comes to mind for me is all those Lord of the Rings movies. They all came out around the same time.
Oh, so you just associate those movies with Thanksgiving. They're not really Thanksgiving movies.
No. I mean, Son of a Woman is a Thanksgiving movie.
Okay.
It is.
Not Lord of the Rings.
Now I'm starting to, Lord of the Rings, it comes in a season, and we're getting these like every other year. It was kind of a big deal, a thing that happened. And then not as much for me, but my oldest brother and his son, every time one of the new Harry Potter films came out, they made a point that those two would go to the movie and watch it together. So, and those movies all also came out around the same time, that Thanksgiving to Christmas window. So that's kind of what I think of with that. I've got some sports stuff too, but we'll get to that in a second, because I imagine you've got some more Thanksgiving.
Well, mine are TV shows.
Okay,
so
fire away.
All the Friends episodes of Thanksgivings, they're all good. So if you go to Friends, I think it's on HBO Plus, I think. But
Okay.
I like the one with all the Thanksgivings and the one with the football. But they have great Thanksgiving episodes. But there's also Bob Newhart, Over the River and Through the Woods, where he just basically gets drunk with his buddies watching football. Really funny. Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They are squashing their beefs. I'm a big Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Have you watched that show?
I
If
have.
you haven't, there's like 20 seasons. You need to start watching it. But there's also, remember Cheers? They had the Thanksgiving episode where they're orphans, basically the Thanksgiving orphans, and they have a food fight. There's all kinds of Thanksgiving stuff out there. But there's one I found last year that was really fun. And do you like Chris Elliott and Amy Sedaris? Are you fans of them? Okay, so they had a limited comedy series called Thanksgiving. And I think it was filmed in real time, and I thought it was hilarious. But they are parents of this dysfunctional family, and they live in a town called Libertyville. And I thought it was hilarious. What pulled me in was the motto of this city was, if you're from here, you're home. I don't know. It's just kind of very Chris Elliott. But that's fun. And I'm not sure where to stream all these yet, but I could go down the whole list. But I'm going to spend my weekend going through finding the Everybody Loves Raymond episode where they're all going to have a healthy Thanksgiving. I had a relative try to do that one time. Do not just don't do the Weight Watchers version of your thing. If it's going to be a broccoli cheese casserole Velveeta, just bring the Velveeta in it. I don't need your fake cheese in this stuff. So just for one day, I'm telling everyone out there, just bring the fat food for one day.
Hey, that's how I look at it.
Suffer through something else.
It's a perfect meal. You got your protein, you got your carb, you got your veggies, you got your fat. What are we complaining about here? It's perfect.
Exactly.
Leave it alone.
You don't want to eat the casserole with all the butter and the cream? Don't eat it. But don't, I mean, my sister, and I love my sister, but she for a while would bring all these desserts, and they would be like Weight Watchers type desserts, and they were not good. Like, just bring my pecan pie. Just, I'll have a little sliver. It's fine. I don't want, whatever. So, but yeah, but again, football, what's coming up that you're all excited about? What's going on there?
Well, personally, I'm just excited about the idea of sitting down after a giant meal and basically what I call the dulcet sounds of play-by-play football game, stuff like that, and just nodding off in the la la land over whoever plays. Because the reality is that Dallas plays, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. I think the Dallas game itself will be worth watching because it's a good team. And I forget who they're playing, but I think it's a pretty good matchup. But the Lions play every year. The Lions are bad. They're just bad. They've been bad for a long time. I think
they haven't been good for a while, but you're still
they're
going
the
to
most
watch.
irrelevant team in the NFL. And I think that's really sad because, back in the 50s, they were good.
But you're still going to watch. You're still going to watch. It's funny. When I was growing up, yes, all of, especially the guys, my grandfather, uncles, they would, on my dad's side, we would have this huge Thanksgiving meal. Everyone would be sitting around the living room. And at one point, and it's got to be sort of the experiment and a joke, they would all fall asleep. Like my grandfather, the uncles, they would just kind of watch football and fall asleep. But this is back in the day. They had a small house. We had one television. That was all. So the grandkids, we were all like, okay, but if you change the channel, it's like an alarm system. Whoa, we can't wait. Can't change that. And so it got to be a joke where they would fall asleep and we would be like, how fast will it take to wake them up if we change the channel? Because it's that sound of football on Thanksgiving that it was just like a lullaby.
Well, you're free to miss something. So here's my thinking with that.
You were asleep, didn't matter. Don't change it.
You might miss something. So let's have some memories here, some Thanksgiving football memories.
Memories of being asleep.
All right. 1993, Dallas Cowboys hosting the Miami Dolphins. Both teams are pretty good, but it's the old Texas stadium. It's got the hole in the roof, and it was like snowy and icy in the stadium itself. Mm-hmm. Miami is going for a game-winning kick at the end of the game. Dallas blocks it, and this is where the quirks of football rules come into play. Had the Dallas players just left it alone, the game stays tied, they can do whatever. But Leon Lett tries to pick the ball up, and he fumbles it. Miami recovers, and they get to kick it again, and boom, they win. So it's a sad thing. The guy's a great player. He was a great player in his day. He was a Super Bowl champion. That's the play people remember Leon Lett for. Second memory. Yes, I've got many of these. This was a few years ago, 2015, Thanksgiving. As people might know by watching this podcast, I'm a huge fan of the Denver Broncos, which makes me really, really sad. But going back to the last year when we were truly happy, we're hosting the New England Patriots, defending Super Bowl champions. Peyton Manning is out injured, so they got the backup in there. They play lights out. They are balling out. Goes into overtime. Snow is starting to fall in Denver. C.J. Anderson runs it like 30-something yards, walk-off, game-winning touchdown. We're going bananas. A key win for them going all the way to win the Super Bowl that year. The last time us Denver fans had something to really cheer about. And then, of course, who hasn't had their own little turkey bowl? The guys get together. We got the pigskin. We're out in the yard or out in the park. And, of course, we're not smart by playing like touch or flag football. We're playing tackle football, knocking the fire out of each other. I got good memories of that, even though my shoulders do not agree with me, or my right knee, or several other things.
For years, because my mom's side of the family, she had 4 younger brothers, and it was a big gathering. We went bowling on Thanksgiving. So she lived in Stillwater at the time. And so we would eat, wait a little while, and then go bowling. And because they were getting up there in age, and that was about what they could handle. But we stopped doing that a while back. But I kind of thought it'd be fun to revive that. And surprisingly, bowling alleys they have some traffic on Thanksgiving. Like we would
Movie
go
theaters.
every alley or every whatever would be
Every lane
taken.
full.
All the
Oh,
lanes.
well,
That's what I was looking for. All the lanes would
I
be
can
full.
see this. I can see this. So you
was very
stuff your
chill.
face for lunch with turkey and potatoes and dressing.
Right. You
You
sleep.
sleep it off.
Yeah.
You go to the bowling alley. You start bowling. The next thing you know, you're working up an appetite.
And
If
yes.
they're worth their salt, man, there's going to be pizza. There's going to be pitchers of beer.
that continued. And then when we got back home, you got the leftovers. You got the second round, toward, evening. You got to get another little turkey.
Second round?
Well, not a full, but there'd be people going, you know what? I could use a little bit more turkey.
Fourth.
That'd be the second. We wouldn't have pizza and stuff at the bowling alley. We would just they would drink. I didn't drink because it was just big meal like that. I can't add beer on top of all that, but they did. But it was fun. And we would, at one point, we were tired of just guttering. So we had them put down the guardrails. So we're all grown with the guardrails down on Thanksgiving, and it was hilarious. And eventually we had like friends come out, we started telling them about it because, once the dinner is done, the football's you're tired of it. It was kind of a fun thing. So you might think of bowling if you're not wanting to like knock your shoulder out.
Pepperoni pizza, a bunch of PBRs, and bowling. It sounds like a good night to me.
Exactly. Whatever makes people happy. So anyway, I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving. I hope you have a good Thanksgiving, Bob.
You too.
We're going to be, we have papers next week. We don't have a paper on Thursday because we are all going to have off for the holiday, but we won't have a podcast next week, but we'll be back the week after. I hope everyone has a good holiday.
Peace.
See you later.